Hello,
Hi,
my name is George, or in Greek, Yorgos.
I'm Sana.
We decided to create this YouTube channel to share with you our experiences with traveling and working remotely, specifically in Athens, Greece.
Yeah, we've got just a few more days to go before we leave Berlin and head to Athens, where we'll be for the next 3 months.
Yeah, we've been living in Berlin for the past, around 5 years or so, and we decided to spend some time during the winter months in Athens and work from there. And we would like to share with you our experiences, give you some tips about Athens. I happen to be an Athenian, and Sana is,
Dutch.
yeah, from the Netherlands.
So we were in Athens a couple of weeks ago to check out some co-working spaces. And there we looked at different types of co-working spaces, those that were, let's say, organized or that had been put together by really large real estate companies from also a little bit more the smaller spaces.
More independent.
So we wanted to have a look at the different spaces and made a decision based on what the availability was, what kind of space was we could get, based on that we decided to go with one particular co-working space.
To go with a big brand, I guess we can share it. There is Regus, which owns a chain of co-working spaces called Spaces. We are of course not paid by them for any advertising, it's just what we liked, based on our criteria. As a general overview, the good thing is that there is a growing supply of co-working spaces, so you can find anything you want, starting from more simple, more low-key, more like startup oriented or entrepreneur oriented co-working spaces, to more corporate and polished, like the one we picked, which happens to be a new building with new facilities and nice layout and a lot of infrastructure and equipment offered.
So they had different offerings. They offer a space, let's say a non-dedicated space. And they also offer a dedicated space that you could rent, or they offer private offices. So Joris and I definitely wanted a dedicated space or a private office. Those were the two options we were going for, as particularly for Joris, he needs to have his monitor set up and his computer always set up because he's a developer. I suppose I'm a little bit more flexible with that, but ideally would also have my own monitor and my own things there. So we decided to go with not with a flex space. We decided to go with a dedicated desk or an office. We had a look at the differences. The prices were not huge difference, but we did think that being in a space with other people, it would be easier for us to also meet with other people, whereas if we kind of secluded ourselves together in one tiny little office, we thought that it would probably be less of that. So we decided ultimately for a dedicated desk.
Yeah, the price difference is not very big. If you happen to be two or three, and you get along with each other, then you could opt for a private desk, which does have a lot of advantages. You have a key, you can leave a lot of things there.
Private office.
Private office. You can have your own key, you can leave your things, personal items. It's a bit more, let's say, advantageous in that sense. If you're working on a project all together, and then the cost is almost the same as actually having a dedicated office. But in our case, as we work in different companies, and we would like also to socialize a bit with other people who work remotely, we decided to go for the dedicated office.
Dedicated desk.
Yeah, sorry, I keep to be mixing those two. Dedicated desk.
Yeah.
Maybe with regards to locations, it would be useful for you guys that are planning to go to Athens to know that a lot of the offerings are around the historical center. and being an expat, it's usually a good idea to work and live around the center, to be able to experience the Athenian life, meet other like-minded expats, and enjoy the Athenian way of life. So you could be looking at options which are located around Syntagma, Kolonaki, Thysio, and Monastiraki, more or less. These are the areas with most of the co-working spaces.
Yeah.
If for some reason you happen to be to have a family already, then if you want something more quiet, you could also look in the northern and southern suburbs, which are have a lot more space, a little bit more residential, more quiet, and you can also find options there. Of course, less options than the historical center, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's mostly the big multinationals that own co-working spaces there, like Regus, the one we picked, and probably there are a couple more options these days. Yeah.
So, speaking of areas, Euros was already mentioning of living areas. I think it's also good when you come to Athens first, maybe to stay in an Airbnb or so, or stay in a short-term rental place for a little while, just to explore the city for yourself and see what neighborhoods you really like. Yes, everyone will tell you something different, but I think you need to experience for yourself what you really like and what you really enjoy. I think some of the things that you should also think about is, do you want to live where you work, or do you want to live where you might go out? If you live in an area where you want to go out, perhaps it can also be a lot more noisy. So just think about those things. What would work for you, and what is it that's important for you in your living space as well?
Yeah, we should maybe tell them a little bit about the rents, and you should be prepared. Athens is not as cheap as it used to be. The rents have increased. Probably like a renovated apartment furnished in the center, one-bedroom apartment could be between 500, if you're very lucky, to even 800 or 900 euros, depending on the floor, the view, and the neighborhood.
Yeah, we've also seen neighborhoods where a one-bedroom apartment furnished was over 1,000 euros.
Like Kolonaki, or the nice areas around Syntagma. Metz is very expensive these days. Metz is a quiet neighborhood close to Pagrati. What other options are there? Well, of course, there's Thysio and everything around the Acropolis, which is very touristic. Nice to live in, but unfortunately expensive, unless you really like
for Athenian standards, it's
Definitely.
Expensive. So you would be looking at paying for a one-bedroom apartment somewhere between probably 600 and 800 euros per month.
And then you would even be lucky, because with the Airbnb boom, many Athenians prefer to rent their apartments short-term. So the only way for them to consider long-term would be sometimes prepaying the rent or booking the apartment for at least a year, and prepaying some of these months so that they can have a bit of a feeling of security that they will receive their money. I think as an intro we covered the working and the living spaces. We are not professionals in this YouTube thing, so please excuse us if you see any filming mistakes. But we will come back with more details. We hope, if all goes well, shortly after to have a second video about the city and our first impressions. Of course, I've been living there until I was 25 years old, so I know the city. But it's a bit of seeing Athens in a different view, perspective, and giving you a bit of an expat view in things. So we'll be in touch.
I'll see you next time.